When I first opened my knowledge graph in Obsidian, I was captivated. A single dot appeared at the center of a white, blank canvas, like paper waiting for a pen. Then another dot emerged, and another, each connected by a thin straight line. The formation of the network gradually accelerated, expanding as if it's alive, nodes sprouting, linking, and intertwining in unpredictable directions. The single dots ultimately formed a massive, complex structure. It's organized, chaotic, and elegant. With curiosity, I then searched for other Obsidian users' graphs and found them even more impressive. While many used paid plugins and expansions to improve the visuals with fancier graphics and effects, these graphs reminded me of the fractals, the human brain, and even the galaxy. I couldn't fully explain why I was so fascinated. Perhaps our primal ancestors felt the same awe looking at their galaxy, yet it took them millions of years to find out why. To briefly explain how this graph is generated, I should introduce Obsidian, not a commercial here. Obsidian is a note-taking app for personal knowledge management. It features markdown formats, local storage, and bidirectional links between files. This graph is generated automatically from my Obsidian vault, based on all the nodes I created and the links I made between them. It includes my class nodes, reading nodes, blog nodes, YouTube nodes, all kinds of nodes. I can also embed external links and screenshots, so I literally have access to everything in one place. To a large extent, Obsidian has become my second brain, and since it runs on the computer, has a way better memory and retrieval system than my first brains. In what other aspect does it differ from my human brain? Looking at the graph, the second brain is a web. Human thinking is centralized and the web is decentralized. To be more specific, my first brain moves from node to node, or file to file. I can't think about everything I know at the same time. I can only grab whatever pops up first in my head. For example, thinking of evolution immediately jumps to Darwin. It almost never jumps to a distant, indirectly connected topic because the paths branch out in unpredictable directions. And according to random walk theories, the odds that my thoughts get all the way there is extremely small. Sometimes the magical brain makes those long, surprising jumps, and maybe that's where creativity comes from. But still, creativity is a term we can't fully understand by now. So anyway, in this jumpy process, my human brain ignores the overall web structure. The second brain, however, is an extensive, decentralized structure. No node is more special than the other. What it ignores is the difference between the nodes, which is just a link to a website, and the nodes on which I made my most exciting discovery. So my question is, how does using a decentralized system like Obsidian, which works so differently from my human brain, change the way I understand or retrieve knowledge compared to my own mental habits? Compared to my first brain, my second brain lets me see the bigger picture of my knowledge. There's a term for it, panoramic scanning. To picture it, imagine your memory as a city. Your first brain navigates it from a first-person point of view, like you're walking the streets. The second brain shows the city from a bird's eye view, like switching to Google Maps. Don Ambrose, in his essay Panoramic Scanning, Essential Elements of Higher Order Thought, published in Royal Peer Review, calls on modern learners to develop this ability. According to him, panoramic scanning is extremely helpful for skills like pattern finding and creative connection making, as well as telescoping. Pattern finding and creative connection making means being able to link concepts across different areas, perceiving cross-disciplinary patterns that are imperceptible to others. And by telescoping, Ambrose means the ability to consider simultaneously phenomena and problems from different levels of analysis, to analyze details and the bigger context at the same time. Ambrose mentions great minds like Leonardo da Vinci and Albert Einstein, who mastered the technique of panoramic scanning in their work. But here's the catch. Panoramic scanning doesn't come naturally. Ambrose notes several obstacles: an emphasis on short-term, immediate concerns, sensory bombardment, superficial and polarized thoughts, and tunneled vision, all make it hard to see the bigger picture. This is where obsidian comes in. Panoramic scanning is very powerful, but my human brain rarely does it on its own. Obsidian's graph makes it almost unavoidable. When I zoom out, I'm no longer stuck on a single mental trail. I see clusters, connections, and patterns I would normally overlook. In other words, the decentralized structure doesn't just store my knowledge, it changes the way I look at it. In another research, Juliana Faria conducted a case study to explore how personal knowledge bases, PKBs, influence people's mental performance. The case study looked at 7 Brazilian computer science researchers using Obsidian as their PKBs. All participants had at least a master's degree, with actually 6 of 7 holding PhDs, showing deep expertise in managing and applying complex knowledge in real-world research contexts. The study found that the way the researchers organized their notes really depended on how they planned to find the information later, whether that's using the search bar, clicking on tags, or following links inside other notes. The PKB didn't just store their knowledge, it made their thinking visible, showing how they approached problems and discoveries in their field. Their workflow had 3 main steps: jotting down ideas on the spot, organizing and formatting notes for later use, and then actually retrieving the information. The cool part is that these steps all feed into each other. The way they organize their notes affects how they find things later, and the way they plan to find things shapes how they organize their notes in the first place. In summary, Obsidian's decentralized structured setup shapes how users understand and access it, giving real evidence for how a second brain can change the way we think. So, looking back at everything, here's the key takeaway. Obsidian isn't just a tool for storing notes. Its decentralized, web-like structure actually changes the way we think. It lets us step back and see the bigger picture of our knowledge, clusters, connections, and patterns that our human brain would usually miss. It supports panoramic scanning, helps us make creative connections, and makes our implicit thinking visible, like what the Brazilian researchers discovered with their own PKBs. In other words, using a second brain doesn't just make information easier to find. It reshapes our mental habits, expands what we can see and connect, and gives us a new way to explore our own ideas. And maybe that's the magic of personal knowledge bases. They turn thinking from a linear, jumpy process into something more like flying over a city, seeing all the streets, bridges, and neighborhoods at once.